Today we'll be replacing the engine and transmission mounts on a 2002 Honda Civic. We'd like to thank Anchor Industries for making this video possible by providing us with their high quality parts. To eliminate all engine and transmission vibration from worn out mounts, we'll be replacing all 4 of the mounts. We're going to start by replacing this front mount. To do that, to relieve tension on the mounts, we're going to support the engine by putting a wood block between the oil pan and the hydraulic lift. That's it, just a little bit of tension. Alright, we're going to remove this electrical harness out of the way. Okay, that's fairly loose. Now, I'll do the top bolt. Okay, that's loose. Now I'll go underneath. Okay. See how loose this is? This is a broken mount. There it is. Now, because that mount was broken, when I install the new mount, I may have to manipulate my hydraulic jack to move the engine up and down a little bit, so I'll have an easier time installing the center bolt. With this extension here on this nut, there's no need to hold this nut in place with a box wrench or open end while I'm torquing down the bolt, so I'll just put this back. This is the top portion of the mount, that's the bottom. So I'm using dielectric grease as a lubricant so I can slide this mount in. I don't use regular grease so it doesn't corrupt the rubber. Make minor adjustments to the height of the transmission to align the bolt with the bolt holes. Okay, I'm just going to leave it just mildly loose so I can mount the top bolt. Okay, so I use my 3/8 inch torque wrench, set it to 36 foot-pounds to torque down the bracket bolts here. And we're done with that mount. Now we'll replace the driver's side motor mount. Alright, we're removing these 17mm nuts. So I dropped the engine from the oil pan and transmission so I get clearance away from this ABS unit. I have to tilt it up again a little bit. There. Okay. There we go. I adjusted the height of the engine to ease removal of the side motor mount, so clear past the ABS unit. There we go. Okay, we got it on the studs. Now we'll just lift it up. There. These nuts have to be torqued on at 69 foot-pounds. So this is the replacement mount with these little vibration dampeners on the side. And so we're only dealing with 3 bolts that secures this to the chassis of the car. Just applying just a little bit of tension to relieve any load on the side mount. Just a little bit. That's it. Okay, almost have it out. There it is. Here's the transmission mount. We have 3 bolts on the side that holds it in place. We have 1 center bolt over here that holds the mount to the transmission bracket. We're going to first take this center bolt out and get a feel as to how much pulling tension there is, and then adjust the hydraulic jack to relieve the tension. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's see if I raise the engine up a little bit. Yeah, that's not bad at all. I think we hit the sweet spot. There's no tension on it, this mount. Okay, so I'll use my electric ratchet to get that 17mm bolt out. Alright, so I'm going to drop the transmission a little bit. Okay, we got the bolt out. Now this bracket won't come off unless I remove this dampener. Now we'll remove these 17mm bolts that's holding the side transmission mount in place. Okay, I got the torque off. Here's the new anchor mount, and it came with these little vibration dampeners, and you got a little notch in here to line it up. Alright, so we got all 3 bolts on hand tight, and now we'll apply the final torque. Alright, we'll drop the transmission a little bit to get the clearance to do that last bolt. Okay, looks like I have to raise the transmission up a little bit. Okay. Okay, that's basically hand tight. Now I'll raise the transmission so that it's pushing up on the bracket. Now I'll torque these nuts down. I'll apply the initial torque with the impact and then the final torque with my torque wrench. With the anchor mounts, we don't need to use this vibration dampener that on the original mount went like this. So now we can relieve the supporting tension on the transmission. So that's it for the transmission mount. So we've replaced 3 mounts. We're on the last and final mount to replace. Okay, so now we're going to do the rear motor mount. In order to get access to the mount, we have to take the left driver's side wheel off. So we're going to get both front wheels off the ground and support the engine with another hydraulic jack so that while we're in the process of removing the mount, that there won't be any stress on the mount. These 3 bolts attach the motor mount to the engine bracket. The motor mount is right over here. And these 3 bolts attach to the motor mount. It didn't move that much, but I'll be able to get a tool in there to get these 3 bolts out. Wow, that's a long bolt. So this bolt's a little shorter. Now before I remove these 3 bolts, I need to support the engine, take the load off the mount by putting a jack underneath the transmission. Okay, we don't have to put a lot of pressure on it, just enough to support the mount. Okay. Twist the mount so the mount is facing towards the wheel well. When the mount is accessible through the wheel well, then remove the center mounting bolt, and that will allow the bracket to come out easier. There. So here's the new mount, the 3 bolts that attach to the subframe. So you have 3 bolt holes here, 3 mounting bolts to the engine, and 1 bolt to secure the bracket to the mount. So that's a total of 7 bolts. So I'll just make this hand tight. Yeah, you got a little notch here. Okay, we'll just torque this down once it's mounted. So we cleaned up the bolts with a wire brush, and we're putting some anti-seize on the threads. With the center mount bolt loosely fitted onto the bracket, you can maneuver the mount and the bracket from underneath the CV axle instead of through the wheel well. After attaching the mount bracket onto the transmission, elevate the transmission so that you have a little bit of a gap between the mount and the subframe, so you can screw in hand tight the 3 mounting bolts. After all the bolts have been hand tight, then you could lower the transmission, applying force onto the subframe from the mount, and then torque down the bolts. So take the car out for a drive, notice the reduction in vibration, and thank you Anchor Industries for providing us with these high quality mounts. And we're done.